Hello and welcome to Innovating in the DC, how Lifeway's unique vision for voice paid off. This is a special educational session where we're going to learn how Lifeway, one of the world's largest providers of Christian resources, realized that hands-free advantage of voice could be the next operational innovation inside their distribution center operations. My name is Michael Levins and I'm Group Editorial Director for Peerless Media Supply Chain Group, which of course includes Modern Materials Handling Magazine, and I'll be your moderator for this session that's sponsored by Honeywell and presented by our friends at Vitech. Well, as the need for order, speed, and accuracy continue to increase within the four walls of the warehouse and distribution center, voice-directed picking is clearly becoming more and more attractive to a wider range of distribution operations. Now, in many cases, the technology replaces both traditional paper-based systems and mobile computer-based solutions, both of which require employees to review instructions, enter information into a computer, or scan barcodes. But by freeing up employees' hands and eyes, voice systems can help increase accuracy, efficiency, and safety to a degree that manual or computer-based systems simply can't touch. And as interest in voice has grown, the number of innovations being introduced by vendors of voice-related software and hardware has certainly increased exponentially. However, many companies may still think that their particular business requirements preclude the use of voice technology in their warehouses in DC. And as we'll learn today, Lifeway and their unique need for picking multiple SKUs simultaneously for multiple orders was certainly not a typical voice installation. However, with the help of a creative technology partner, that would be Vitech, they were able to realize their vision for a voice solution that helped them recognize gains in productivity, accuracy, and customer satisfaction almost immediately. Well, joining us today to share the Lifeway success story are Justin Sullivan and Gary Oldman. Now, Justin is manager of supply chain and systems at Lifeway and has extensive expertise in transportation management, inventory management, and distribution center operations. He currently guides continuous improvement efforts inside Lifeway's logistics department and maintains responsibility for a variety of supply chain projects. Well, in fact, Justin managed the implementation of the voice picking project at Lifeway in 2012. Now, we're going to learn about that a little bit more today. Justin, we're so glad you can be with us today. Now, Gary is Vice President of Sales at Vitech Business Group. Now, he has over 30 years of experience in the technology sector at companies such as Vocollect, Cisco Systems, Symbol Technologies, and Wang Labs. Now, Gary leads Vitech's growing sales team across the United States and Canada. So, Justin and Gary, guys, welcome today. We really appreciate that. Now, I'm just going to quickly go through the agenda in just a few moments. Justin's going to share a little bit more about Lifeway. He's going to take a look at the operational overview. Then he's really going to get into the nuts and bolts of what we're here today to learn about, the evolution and progression of voice at Lifeway. He's going to share what life was like before voice, the path they took, how they found the solution, and then how it works. But then even more importantly, life after voice. He's going to share those hard and soft benefits that were realized from that implementation. Then, of course, those all-important lessons learned. Now, while the guys are going through their presentation today, please make sure to submit your questions. We're going to have a Q&A session following the presentation, so make sure to submit your questions while Justin and Gary are working through their way through the slides today. And if we don't get to your question today as we're going through those answers, our panelists are going to respond via email following the event. We have a lot of questions. I'm sure they'll be rolling in. If we can't get to yours, that will be captured, and the guys will get that via email and be able to get right back to you with a quick answer to that. So without any further ado, Justin, why don't you give us a little bit of a background on Lifeway and get us started.
Sure thing, Mike, and thanks for having us, and thank you, Gary, as well. But as Mike mentioned, Lifeway is one of the largest providers of Christian material in the world. We ship both domestically and internationally. We own and operate over 180 Lifeway stores across the nation. Most of those are in the southeast, but we do have stores all the way out on the west coast and in the northeast as well, even though we're based in the Middle Tennessee area. Like the slide says there, we are headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. Our distribution center is in Lebanon, Tennessee, about 30 miles east of our corporate headquarters. Of those 3,000 employees that you see listed on the slide there, most of those employees are going to be based in a Lifeway store. Each of the 180 Lifeway stores will have about 15 to 20 employees, so that makes up a large percentage of our employee base. Then we have about 700 employees at our corporate headquarters, and then we have about 200 employees at our distribution center. And again, we are a nonprofit organization, and we serve 4 main categories of customers that I like to talk about. Those categories being individuals, somebody that may be ordering off of .com, or maybe they're calling in to our call center to place an order. A church, a trade account or trade customer, such as a Walmart or an Amazon, and then, of course, our own store chain. So those are the 4 categories of customers that we serve out of our facility, and we'll be talking more about some of those in a little bit more detail. So now a more specific operational overview of what's going on inside the 4 walls of our distribution center. Again, it's about a 350,000 square foot facility. About half of that facility size is what I'll call high bay storage. So that's pallet storage, product storage. And pallet storage section is 6 pallets high, and in that area we have narrow aisles which use wire guidance technology. So a lot of storage space there. Even though that sounds like a lot of storage space, we're actually also in a couple off-site facilities for our pallet storage as well. And then about 20% of the building's total size is dedicated to our loose pick area. And I want to mention that specifically because the loose pick area is where we are currently utilizing voice picking technology. And when I say loose pick, I'm referring to each picking or less than a vendor case quantity. So if a vendor shipped Lifeway a carton or books in cartons of 24, and a customer ordered 10 or 12 of those are going to be picked and processed from the loose pick side of the facility, not the high bay storage side of the facility. We do not open up any cases on the high bay storage side of the facility. That side of the facility is used as it is named, is used for storage. It will replenish the loose pick side of the facility, and it will also we will pull full cases or full pallets out of that area if a customer happens to order in a full case or a full pallet quantity. We have about 200 employees at our DC, like I've already mentioned, and at any given time in our facility, we'll have at least 15,000 unique items in the building. Right now, we're actually probably closer to 20,000 unique items, so we have a large variety of items in the facility. And again, those are going to those 4 main types of customers that I mentioned earlier: individuals, churches, trade accounts, or even our own Lifeway Christian store chain. We have a fully functional assembly area, and what I mean by that is we have the capability to perform a variety of value-added tasks. So we may be doing things such as stickering items, or we may be building kits and then shrink wrapping those and sending them through a heat tunnel. And then we may be doing some things value-added on the outbound side as well. So, for example, let's say a customer wanted their name imprinted on a Bible. After that order is picked, that order could route back to the assembly area and have that value-added task of their name imprinted on the Bible done and performed and then shipped out. Similarly, if a church wanted some sheet music hole punched, we can perform functions like that. And our most common imprint is probably what I mentioned, somebody's name getting imprinted on a Bible, or churches will also have their church name imprinted on hymnals if they order a large quantity of hymnals. We're utilizing a lot of different types of technologies in our facility. In addition to voice, we're utilizing Pick-to-Light in an area. We have a conveyor system with about 2,500 feet of conveyor. That's about a half mile worth of conveyor. We're utilizing RF scanners in portions of our facility, and we have a WMS and a TMS as well that I like to say are the backbone of our facility. And then additionally, we're shipping about 2 million packages out of our facility annually. So if you do the math on that, that's averaging about 8,000 packages a day that are leaving our facility. So a pretty decent volume that's departing from there. The next slide, I'm going to talk about ongoing material first and what that means, because that will help us to understand what the undated terminology means that I'll be referring to as we move forward in this presentation. But for Lifeway, ongoing material is quarterly or monthly material that is typically going to churches. and that is typically being used in a Sunday school class, typically on Sunday morning. So anybody that's been to church before and been to a Sunday school class or another type of Bible study at your class, the material that is used in that class is what Lifeway calls the ongoing material. We process about 100,000 units of that daily, and we are currently processing that through a pick-to-light system. Now, everything else that Lifeway processes out of our distribution center, whether it's Bibles or books or music, whether that be a CD or actual sheet music, or whether it's church or store supplies, all other categories of products we lump into the undated terminology category. So when I say undated material, that's what I'm referring to. I'm referring to Bibles or books or music or anything else other than the ongoing material. That's important to differentiate for us because the undated material is the only material that is in the loose pick section where we are currently using the voice technology. So right now we're processing about 20,000 order lines of undated material every day. We do that with 25 to 30 users that are using the voice technology, and then those orders, after they're picked, they're packed at about 15 pack stations that are packing those orders. The orders are processed over one shift. However, our shift is staggered. So our forklift drivers may come in as early as 5 a.m., and they will start pulling replenishment for the loose pick side of the facility. Our pickers will come in at 7:30, and our shipping department comes in at 8. So we're a one-shift operation, but it is a little bit staggered there. And we ship to our store chain every other day. And when I say that, let's say we have all of our Lifeway stores divided into 4 groups. So I'll call those groups A, B, C, and D. And so today we might be processing store group A and store group B. And then tomorrow we would process store group C and store group D. And then the next day we would repeat the process. We will go back to A and B, and then we will go back to C and D the next day. So we're shipping to our stores every day, but we're processing each group every other day. Going back to the undated material again, that material has some regularity to it in terms of order volume, but it looks different every day. .com may look different every day in terms of orders that come in, as well as trade accounts. Those may look different every day. So we're managing that volume, and then likewise, our Lifeway stores are primarily selling the undated material, the Bibles or books. And so depending on what sells inside the store at any given time, that's going to affect what our workload looks like for the next day. So we do have some variability there in regards to the workload, and it's not as consistent or predictable as the ongoing material. The ongoing material, again, which is handled in a pick-to-light system, it's very cyclical. It's on a monthly or quarterly cycle, and it's processed in that pick-to-light area. Moving on to the next slide, life before voice for Lifeway, which again is in that undated loose pick area. We were paper picking. So picture a couple sheets of paper or several sheets of paper actually with numerous lines on the paper, each line indicating the location to go to and the item description and the quantity to pick. All that was printed on that sheet of paper, which we called the tour list or the tour sheet. And then we would take that tour sheet and take a cart and tour that around the facility in that loose pick area. So we have 2 types of carts in our facility that are used in the loose pick area. We have a 6-slot cart that's used for larger orders, and then we have a 35-slot wire cart that's used for smaller orders, such as the .com. Maybe somebody just goes to .com and they order 1 book. So that something like that would be a good candidate to fill into that wire cart. This was an eyes down, hands occupied approach is what we like to call this. Excuse me. There was a lot of steps to check off on that tour sheet that I mentioned earlier. So we would train users that when they got to a location, they would make a check mark that they were at the right location. They would make another check mark that the right item is in the right location. They would make a check mark that they have the correct quantity. They would make another check mark that they have placed the correct quantity in a tote or multiple totes, because they could be pulling a quantity that's spread across multiple totes on their carts. And so there's, as you can imagine, there's a lot of up and down as they were looking at their tour sheet, looking at the location in front of them, or looking at the item that they were holding in their hand, and a lot of juggling in their hand as well, right? So maybe I had several items in my hand as I had gone through my pick path and that I had picked, and so I had to sit my tour sheet down, so I had to pick that back up. So this led us to have, even with all our check marks and things we tried to have in place, we had a large number of errors, I would consider. We had an 8.83% carton error rate and a 1.29% line error rate, and neither of those are anything to be proud at. Certainly measuring the same thing, just measuring it in different ways. So we had a culture of continuous improvement at Lifeway, particularly in our distribution center. So we're always seeking out ways for us to make ourselves better, which ultimately means we serve our customers better too, right? So in this situation of the errors that we were having in our loose pick area, we decided that it was time to better leverage technology in that area. And as I mentioned, we have a variety of technology in other areas of our facility, and we landed on voice picking as being the right move for us for this moment in time to move to. So the obvious is hands-free, right? We didn't want RF units to have to be held and then going around scanning locations or products, and we wanted to get rid of the tour sheets that we had. We wanted particularly the accuracy gains and the productivity gains that are touted by voice technology. And we have some unique process issues that we felt like voice could address for us. And when I say unique process issues, I'm referring to the large variety of SKUs that Lifeway has in our facility, the different types of customers that we serve, again, our own store chain, churches, individuals, and trade accounts, and the desire to continue to pick these different types of customer orders at the same time is all what led us to our vision of voice picking. And so we've ended up landing with Vitech as our vendor of choice to implement voice for us. During our RFP process and our search for this, we determined that Vitech was the folks that could best meet the vision and the idea that we had in our minds for how to do this. We knew that we would need some customization and not just a straight off-the-shelf solution. And so we ended up going with Vitech to help us accomplish that. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Gary, and I think he's going to tell you a little bit more about Vitech. Gary?
Thanks, Justin. I appreciate it. Vitech's one of Vocollect's largest and fastest-growing resellers in North America. We also have customers in Latin America and Europe and even some other places like in Africa. Vitech's most often involved in really complex or innovative uses of voice. So whether that's in the distribution center or in applications that are outside of the distribution center, we often get involved in those, and Vocollect actually introduces us to customers who have unique application requirements. And Lifeway is just exactly one of those situations where Vocollect came to us and said, we've got a unique application here. Why don't you take a look at it and see if there's something you could do to help Lifeway. And I think it's important to note right now that Vocollect, the very famous product line that they've created over 20 years ago, is now part of the Honeywell Scanning and Mobility product group. So let's take a minute to talk a little bit more about how Vitech makes a difference in delivering unique solutions to customers like Lifeway. First, we start by assessing the need. If you look at a traditional batch picking environment, it involves directing a worker to a slot, picking a certain quantity of one SKU, and then directing the worker to distribute those picks to multiple locations on a cart. And you heard Justin talk about having a 6-position cart and a 35-position cart. Just figure that you're putting product into each one of those slots. At that, what Lifeway wanted to do, though, is they wanted to save even more time, more travel time specifically, by having the worker pick multiple SKUs in one trip to a pick face. Normally in a batch pick, you're going to pick one SKU and come back and distribute it across multiple locations. In this case, we're going to go pick multiple SKUs and distribute those SKUs against multiple put destinations. And that is a complex application, and it's ripe for confusion with the worker. So what Vitech did is we created a multi-pick and a multi-put application where the worker is directed to the location and instructed to pick a quantity of one SKU. Once they've confirmed that they've picked that SKU, they're directed to another location in the same proximity to pick another SKU or quantities of another SKU, and that process continues on until the worker decides that they've actually accumulated all the products that they want to carry and they want to start making puts. At that point, the worker says drop, and the system then starts reading to them numbers of the line items that the worker is holding. The worker will read that line item. The system will tell him which destination to put that specific pick, and until he's completed putting away all the products that he's got in his hand, and the system directs him down the aisle to go on another trip and to make more picks. The result of that was significant added productivity to Lifeway, as well as an improvement in accuracy, which you will hear about later. So our analysts, particularly one of the analysts that was involved in this project, is an absolute expert in warehouse operations and in the use of voice technology. Our team are operational experts in best practices within the distribution center. And we focus on a goal of improved process using the world's leading voice-directed work technology that's available to you from Honeywell Vocollect. We don't simply work to have you change your process to match a common voice solution that we offer, nor do we modify a baseline of software capabilities to match your existing process. Instead, we work with you to design the ideal solution and then use the best practices and creative concepts, sometimes modifying existing software and often inventing new software solutions to train your workforce and implement the final result. Then once the system is deployed, there's an onboard audible help system that will enable the worker to address the challenges and answer any questions that they may have. It serves like a coach on the shoulder to help the worker continue to improve on a daily basis. In the Lifeway example, particularly, the worker can ask aisle info while they're in the middle of their pick job. And what that system will then tell him is the number of picks that are left in that general aisle. So the worker can decide, do I want to go ahead and pick 2 or 3 more? Or if he hears there's several more picks, they can choose to go back and do some puts, then go back and do more picking. It gives the worker the flexibility to drive productivity to the levels that Lifeway is challenging them to accomplish while maintaining accuracy and protecting the quality of the products that they're picking. So these solutions do the job every day for Lifeway and for other customers, while still giving flexibility to the demands of your operation. So why do companies like Lifeway do this? Well, it's pretty straightforward. It's just to drive a highly efficient workforce, which of course drives productivity and improved accuracy and bottom line profit. So it drives profitability to the bottom line. So let's talk about how that ROI is gained. So the ROI is derived really from 3 primary areas across the board. Productivity is improved, accuracy is improved, and training time is reduced. There's a lot of other areas where organizations experience benefit from the use of voice. But those are the 3 primary areas. Vitech customers have seen productivity increases from no less than 10% to as high as 50%. And this is as a direct result of replacing current processes like paper or RF screen-based devices with optimized voice processes. Why? Well, as you heard Justin say earlier, the baseline deliverable of voice is that it's hands-free and eyes-focused versus hands-consumed and eyes-distracted. So that alone drives a significant amount of productivity. The focus drives accuracy. And of course, while productivity of the worker and all workers is critical, it addresses only one of those underlying elements. In reality, what you're trying to do in your operation, as Justin was, is gain overall throughput so it can keep up with the volumes and spikes that are sometimes forecasted and sometimes not able to be forecasted in their operation. So what we also deploy are dashboards that provide management views that enable them to react to the challenges of the day, make adjustments on how work is assigned to individuals, and overall increase efficiency of the operation. We can also integrate replenishment processes that enable additional savings by having product available in the forward pick slots in advance of the time that they're needed, reducing or eliminating picking shorts. And of course, auditing is also an aspect of workforce efficiency. And it's tied to accuracy. Improving accuracy reduces the need for audits, therefore removing bottlenecks from your operation and improving throughput overall. And to address improved training, with voice, your existing and your new workforce are trained and enabled very, very rapidly. One of the challenges of getting a new and a temporary workforce up to speed is the time it takes them to be trained and to use the tools that are required. And as you know, that'll often require you to have two people taking time to get one person trained and up to speed. The training tools that we deploy address this very directly. Vocollect's Rapid Start product enables Vitech and you to deliver a training need to every worker with self-paced self-instruction tools, which free the supervisor from one-on-one training and enable them to train several workers at once. Remote monitoring and the use of browser-based tools are central to the universal success of these tools. So we help the worker quickly get past the need to learn how to use the tools and start concentrating on the job at hand, which is getting the picking job done. So that workers are able to concentrate on the task at hand, which directly relates to productivity and accuracy improvements. So, bottom line, voice wins. Why does it win? Because companies like Lifeway that implement these solutions experience improvements in productivity, improvements in accuracy, and improvements in training efficiency. Payback is amazingly fast. And workers experience high performance, comfortable, and reliable tools that they can use every day. And so what we want to do is take just a moment more here to focus on some of the specific success stories that Justin and Lifeway were able to experience. Justin?
Thanks, Gary. So as you can see on the slide there, first off, I'm certainly not going to read every line on the slide to you, but we had a 6.52% increase in our lines per hour. I would call that a modest increase as compared to the benefits that we got from our accuracy. We had a 79.2 reduction in our carton error rate, and we had a 69.8% reduction in our line error rate. So for us, that was huge. That was also actually noticeable from week one when we went in with this. And of course, those measurements are taken over a year's time to fully gauge the true impact of having voice versus not having voice. And then Lifeway's training time for a new picker went from about 3 days down to 4 hours. So that's also a pretty substantial benefit there in training time. Now, some of the soft results that we got from the voice technology is we had a high level of employee adoption and happiness with this. And I like to attribute a lot of that to how we involved some of the end users very early on in our process with this, rather than having a group of management or professionals in a testing room testing this new technology and then pushing it out to the end users. We brought several of those end users in to help us with the testing. We brought them in very early on. and we brought in a range of different users, from baseline to even some high end that may take the accuracy and productivity and blow it out of the water every day. So we had some pickers from all over the spectrum helping us with the testing, and really they are the ones that disseminated to the rest of the workforce the positive feedback that they got from voice, and the excitement was built around that because of those end users and because of us involving them early on. So we had a high level of employee adoption and happiness with that. We're also using voice now for opportunistic cycle counting. So what that means for us is that on any given location we have a quantity threshold that's set, and so let's say that quantity threshold is 3, and let's say a location has a quantity of 4 of a particular item in it. So a picker goes to that location, and let's say they're instructed to pick 3, so that would leave a quantity of 1 remaining in that location. Because that threshold has been reached, after the picker completes their pick, they're going to be prompted to say, hey, go ahead and confirm back to me what quantity is remaining in this location. And so the picker, if there was 1 there, they would say 1, and that matches what the system thinks is there, so there's no additional task at that point. If the picker gave a different result, let's say the picker said 2 or 3, or even 100 for that matter, and it did not, their stated quantity did not match what the system believes is in that location, that's going to then trigger some additional tasks for our inventory control team to dive in and investigate that further. So opportunistic cycle counting is very important for Lifeway. Cycle counting in general is very important to Lifeway. We do not do an annual physical inventory. We do not have an annual shutdown like some places do to do an API. Then we had quick payback on our voice investment. Any project that we're doing in our DC, we'd like to have a payback of under 2 years for that to be realized, and voice was no exception to that. It was probably closer to a year. You saw the numbers there with the accuracy, and so that was a big driver on us getting the payback for that, and voice is easy for the end user to work with as well. Some things that went well with the voice project for us, certainly our relationship with Vitech was very good. I'd rate them as a very great vendor to do business with from my perspective and my dealings with them. The implementation was smooth despite there was some infrastructure issues, which did cause a delay to our initial implementation date. I'll elaborate on that further in a minute. Like I mentioned earlier, we had a high level of management and end-user adoption for voice picking technology. And then problems are easy to troubleshoot, and support is great also from Vitech and Vocollect. But I mentioned a second ago that the wireless infrastructure had some issues. So what could have gone better for us was we could have more readied that infrastructure to be ready to move to voice. We're utilizing RF scanners in some areas of our facility, like I've previously mentioned. Not to dive into the details of all that, but essentially those devices were masking some problems with our wireless infrastructure that the new voice devices showed, and that relates to the calls being made to the database and more real-time things occurring because of the picking and the opportunistic cycle counting that we're doing. So that could have gone a little better, but overall it was still a smooth implementation, and it was a great project to work on. I came into the project partway while it was already underway, and so I did see it through to its completion. And Lifeway's IT team was great to work with, and is great to work with. I work with them often, and Vitech was great to work with as well, and would certainly work with them again and looking at voice for other areas of our distribution center. So at this point, I'm going to pass it back to Mike. And Mike, I think you're going to do some Q&A.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Justin. Wow, what a terrific story. With the benefits are just incredible. I can't get over that training time, and I think we have a couple questions actually coming in here that have a couple questions for you, Justin, on just the training time. That's remarkable timing. I just want to remind everybody who's in attendance with us today, we are gathering a number of questions, and quite a few of them are coming in right now. So we do have I'd say about 10 minutes for Q&A. If we don't get to your question today, don't fear. We will be able to get those over to Justin and Gary, and they'll be able to get back to you via email. Justin, a few quick questions for you that just rolled in over the last couple minutes. Gentlemen on the floor, just had a quick question for you on what role does RF scanning now play in the DC at Lifeway, since you rolled out voice? Is there a role for scanning in the voice solution?
Well, first off, we still use RF scanning in some areas of our facility. RF scanning is currently used in our high bay storage area that I mentioned earlier, where we're scanning a pallet ID or we're scanning a container ID. And then we're using RF scanners also in our shipping area when we're scanning containers, and we're doing basically freight consolidation, and we're scanning SSCCs, which is a serial shipping container code. So we're scanning labels like that. Those areas are certainly areas that we could maybe move to voice in the future. Just due to other IT priorities, we've not looked at that or dove into that further. But
gotcha.
We are still utilizing RFs in our facility, and just to be candid, I think voice can work well in certain situations, and maybe in some situations it doesn't work well.
Sure.
So that's why we've maintained some of the other existing technologies that we have in our facility.
Right, absolutely, and it sounds like with a partner like Vitech, you were able to, because you weren't the ideal scenario, but working with Vitech obviously moved you in that direction. And actually, the next couple questions we had rolling in were about that partnership. And I guess I'll start with you, Justin, on this side. How did you go about finding Vitech, and how did this partnership sort of evolve? And I'll ask Gary to jump in too after you give us your answer.
Sure. I honestly don't remember exactly how we first heard the name Vitech, but Lifeway is very good and diligent about procurement, whether that be procurement of product or procurement of services or IT services like this. And so we did a full-on RFP for this voice project, and again, Vitech was the one that was chosen at the conclusion of this RFP. As being the one that we felt could meet our needs the best.
Yeah, gotcha. Gary, in terms of developing that relationship, what would you say is the role there of Vitech in getting involved there from the very beginning with a customer like Lifeway? How does that sort of evolve for you? Oh, Gary?
Vocollect received the RFP that Lifeway was Justin was talking about earlier.
Sure.
They reached out to us and asked us to review some of the unique requirements, because the RFP had a pretty significant focus on this multi-pick, multi-put, and it's not something that Vocollect would normally try to do with voice. So they reached out to us and said, is this something that you could work on? And so we partnered with them to pursue the opportunity.
Sure. Absolutely. So you're able to get in there and take a look at the situation and go from there. And it seems like it's a terrific partnership and still obviously ongoing. A couple more questions, Justin, coming from the floor for you in particular. Is Lifeway using labor standards? And if so, were standards adjusted after you guys had the voice up and running?
We do use labor standards. We have a couple industrial engineers as part of our team. And so most of the jobs in our facility do have an engineered standard, so we are using that. The standard for loose pick, which was previously paper picking, then it moved to voice picking, that standard was changed about a year after we went live with voice. So after we had time to measure ourselves and validate the ROI and validate that, yes, this is doing what we anticipate that it was doing, which then brought me to those numbers that I shared with the group earlier. After that time, we did adjust the standards. but
right.
we
Gotcha.
certainly did not do that prior to evaluating our
Right.
ROI.
Absolutely, you had to see how things were fleshing out there. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
We have a couple software questions that just rolled in. Justin, for you, what WMS were you guys up and running when you rolled this out, and still using?
We're using a Dematic WMS solution
Okay.
that was previously developed by HK Systems prior to them being acquired by Dematic. And so we're still using that Dematic WMS now.
I see. Gotcha. Now, Gary, a couple questions for you coming up here. In terms of software as well, I understand you had the Vocollect hardware. What voice software did Vitech install as well? Did you roll out the Vocollect as well?
Yes, we did. Vocollect has middleware software called VoiceLink that Vitech uses in situations like this with customers like Lifeway, where we want to interface to the WMS in a way that provides some additional functionality, additional visibility to the work at hand, while not decreasing the role of that WMS at all, because the WMS still provides all the business logic related to what's going to go on in the floor of the DC. And then we modify it and write our own front-end dialogues that interact with VoiceLink and with the worker. And I do want to also say, Mike, you asked a question about our scanning. Scanning and voice are actually complementary. So we have a lot of customers that still will scan a barcode or a long serial number in order to capture it as part of the voice dialogue and the workflow that voice is actually driving. So we don't want to say that in every case if you're scanning something you got to replace it. It's not true. Sometimes it's best to put the two together.
No, that makes a lot of sense, Gary. No question. In terms of, Gary, another question for you to keep rolling, and actually we had a couple of these on implementation time. I believe you might have touched on that in your slides, but how long did the project take to implement? Can you kind of walk us through that a little bit more? Because sometimes those times sort of put folks off. So maybe you can make them feel a little bit more at ease on that kind of time.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you bet. So sometimes implementations are pretty quick, and sometimes they aren't as quick, and really that's a factor of just how much design and development work is required to develop the best possible process for what they're doing. On average, we say it's projects like Lifeway's are a 12-week project. Now, does it take 12 weeks, calendar days from start to finish it? Usually not. It's more of a function of getting everybody's calendars, because Lifeway doesn't do business to do voice, right? They do business to do other things. So we got to fit our project into what it is they're doing, and we do our defined phase. We go off and start developing the software while Lifeway is doing work on the floor of the DC to put check digits up and rearrange product and do whatever IT-related activities they have to the project, etc. Then we come back together and move into the third stage, the perform phase, where we bring the system on site, set it up, then go live. And then over the periods of time after that, we are doing refining of the final application to make sure it meets each and every one of the business requirements that Lifeway spec'd out for us.
Gotcha. Makes a lot of sense. And Justin, you did mention that infrastructure work that you could have done a little bit better up front, but overall it seems as if this implementation went pretty smoothly, and that training time is extraordinary.
Yes, sir, it is.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, guys, we do have a couple more minutes left before we need to wrap up, and I just want to kind of maybe ask you, and I'll start with you, Justin, maybe for a lot of our attendees out there who are thinking about making this turn to adopt voice and take a look at their operations to see if this is something that's going to work inside their operations, is there any sort of like a key takeaway or something you might want to share, Justin, as we wrap up, a key takeaway that maybe kind of push them over the fence towards this type of solution?
I'd say you have to, first off, look at your unique situation and really just determine what's best for you. And technology is changing so fast, and advancements in technology, particularly with voice recognition are changing so fast. You
yeah.
look at what you can do now on a cell phone, for example, in terms of
right.
You saying Siri or Hey Google, do this for me. All that technology, I think, honestly, exists because it's been started and generated in industry first by folks that are trying to develop something, be able to have a solution to present to somebody that's going to make their business more profitable, right?
Right.
So,
yep.
In terms of pushing somebody over the edge to voice, I'd say, things have come a long way from where they were a few years ago. And as an example of that, Lifeway actually looked at voice a few years ago, and we did not pursue it at that time.
Gotcha.
And so it was only in 2012 when we revisited voice and decided, hey, now is the right time for us to pursue this. So things change at a rapid pace.
Absolutely.
The technology is good out there now that it's going to be a good solution for a lot of scenarios.
Yep. Constantly updating and constantly changing, and then all of a sudden you find as if it works really well for you. Gary, how about you? Why don't you take us out? Maybe just one key takeaway there for some of the folks that may be on the fence, when they're considering voice. And anything you just want to have resonate as we just kind of wrap up today?
You bet. I would tag on to what Justin said and just encourage the audience to not put on blinders. I've been in the voice directed work business for 15 years, and over the last 4 years, I've learned that customers that come to Vitech ask us to do some of the oddest things that I would have never dreamed we would use to do.
Yep.
And because they were creative, and because Vitech is a creative company, we sit and look at those situations and have identified how we can absolutely do what they're dreaming they can do. So if you can imagine it, we probably can do it. So
gotcha.
Don't pop the bubble before you ever come and talk to us. If you've got an idea where you want to try to use voice in your operation, come talk to us. We'd be happy to discuss it with you. Excellent.
Well, Gary Oldman, terrific job today. Gary, Justin Sullivan, thank you so much for sharing and taking us inside the operation at Lifeway. You guys have a terrific story to tell there. And guys, thanks again. We really appreciate it. And also I want to thank everybody for attending. Remember, we do have a number of questions we weren't able to get to today, but we're going to package those up and shoot those off to Justin and Gary, and they'll be able to get back to you via email to answer all of your questions. Well, guys, great job. Thank you so much. And we also want to thank Honeywell for sponsoring and making this terrific session happen today. Thanks again, guys, and everybody have a great day.